Trek Geeks is proud to have Fansets as its presenting sponsor. Fansets is the place for amazing pin collectibles with over 200 officially licensed Star Trek pins and new releases every month. Stay tuned for a special discount code good on your next order at fansets.com just for Trek Geeks listeners. Fansets. Our pins have character.
This episode is also sponsored by Science Division, the makers of the world's first interactive Tribble that you can control with your smartphone. Keep listening for a special Trek Geeks discount code when you adopt a new Tribble at sciencediv.com. Science Division. Trouble's never been this fun.
Hi, this is Alexander Siddig, Dr. Julian Bashir on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you are listening to the biggest little show this side of the Gamma Quadrant. It's the Trek Geeks podcast with Bill Smith and Dan Davidson.
From the Podfleet Command Special Office near the Gamma Quadrant. It's the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant and the flagship of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. Greetings, one and all. Welcome to Trek Geeks. We're so glad you're here. We know we got a lot of new people listening this week, so we welcome you here to episode number 217. I'm your co-host, Bill Smith. Thank you so much for downloading and checking us out. Whether you're brand new or whether you've been listening to us for a long time, we love to show up every week and talk about Star Trek, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. And of course, by we, I do mean my co-host and I. If there was a stable wormhole to the Gamma Quadrant, I would immediately drop him on the other side and then head right back to Deep Space Nine. He is the largely strandable Dan Davidson. And Dan, welcome aboard, buddy.
Hey, it's good to be here. I don't look at it as stranding me. I look at it that you want me to be the ambassador for the Alpha Quadrant with all the people in the game. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. That's great. You're a good friend.
Now I know how the war with the Dominion started. You were left on the other side.
Wow. So much for that listening post.
Yeah. It was you in a photon torpedo tube.
Yes.
With a Dixie cup. That's the listening post.
There you go. Yeah.
By the way, in space, nobody can hear you scream, buddy.
They probably would not want to because I scream very harshly.
Well,
yeah.
In space, nobody would know.
That's true, too.
Nobody can hear you, Dan. I wish, if you were in space, I couldn't hear you.
You wish you were in space right now.
Oh, more than you know. But more than anything, I wish that we could tell people who we have on the show this week because we're both pretty excited by it.
I think we can do that. And I think I'm going to do that right now. Now that I think about it, this has been something that took us by surprise, and thanks to Bill's groundwork, he hit the ground running and got in contact with some folks, and we are very proud to welcome Alexander Siddig to the show today. He who played Dr. Julian Bashir on Deep Space Nine, and he's been on all kinds of great stuff like 24 and Gotham and Game of Thrones, just to name a few. This gentleman is a real treat. I think you guys are going to love the conversation. I know that it's something that we've been looking forward to since we got the okay that we would be speaking with him. And I think, Bill, you can attest to the fact that he is one of the finest gentlemen we've ever had the pleasure of having on this here podcast.
You know, I think if we met him at a convention, he would be equally as warm and personable. But we had the advantage of being able to talk to him, you know, in a private setting, like, you know, an online meeting and for more than 5 to 10 minutes at a time. And what a fantastic and warm guy. I'm not going to lie. It's one of my favorite conversations on Trek Geeks ever.
I totally agree. What's great is a lot of times in the old days when we did this, we'd have questions written down and we're like, okay, we got to ask this. We haven't done that in a long time with several of the guests that we've had on lately. We just go off the cuff, and those seem to be the most enjoyable conversations. And this one was, for the first time, the only thing I really did was wrote up the intro, because I love doing that. I like taking 6 weeks and writing a really good intro and making sure that they feel welcome. But what a great conversation. Lots of fun details.
I'm just amazed you can read the intro with all the spelling errors.
Well, since I spelled them wrong, I know what I'm reading because it's my own mistakes.
Well, Dan, speaking of mistakes.
Wow.
No, I'm kidding. But like I said, a lot of new listeners this week. We want to take a moment to welcome all the first-time listeners. We're grateful you've downloaded. We hope you enjoy the upcoming conversation with Alexander Siddig. But Dan, in the meantime, how can our new friends get in touch with us if they have feedback or questions?
Well, if you're looking to get in touch with us, you can head right on over to trekgeeks.com/contact, and there you will find a multitude of ways to communicate with us. There is Skype chat, there's email, there's voicemail by way of that big blue button using SpeakPipe. Whatever way you want to contact us, make it so, because we love hearing from you. Plus, there's also the most positive Star Trek group on Facebook. It's called Camp Kittimer, and it is our official group. It's where over 1,700 other friends gather to talk Trek. It's always positive, with no bashing or gatekeeping ever allowed. To join the group, head on over to facebook.com/groups/Camp Kittimer and be ready to be part of a truly wonderful social experience. And as always, we want to thank our wonderful admins, Haley, Jackie, Sarah, and Dan, for the amazing job they do running the camp. Also, please remember that any comments or messages that you leave us in any of these places may be used in a future episode. Bill.
Thank you, Dan. Much appreciated.
Wow, that was gritty.
Well, Dan, as many people discovered last week, Fansets finally had their big announcement, and I think everyone's going to agree it truly was a game changer when it comes to Star Trek collectibles.
Absolutely. It certainly was, man. I think the hardest part was keeping it quiet for as long as we had to, but it was certainly worth the wait. Yes, as you all know by now, Fansets was proud to introduce the full-sized Star Trek Picard Delta to their ever-growing list of high-quality Star Trek pins. It is absolutely gorgeous. The pin comes to you directly from the Star Trek Picard series. It's 2 3/4 inches tall, and it's while it's manufactured with Fansets' normal attention to detail, this was not created to be a cosplay piece and is a pin, not a magnet. The pin retails at only $14.95 plus tax and features a bright silver delta over a matte finished black nickel. Both layers are metal, and the pin has 2 posts to hold it securely in place. And again, this pin is not a prop replica. Very important there. And also, it's safe to say that this pin, Bill, has been a huge success because in one day, they sold out. And they had their best day of business in the history of Fansets. So congrats to them, and thanks to all you Star Trek fans for adding this pin to your collection.
Oh, 100% indeed. If you were unable to purchase your Picard Delta Fansets pin, don't worry. You can pre-order it right now at fansets.com. The next batch of orders will be shipping in mid-May, so get yours now. And hey, while you're at it, maybe pick up the brand new Micro Crew Locutus. That's tough to say.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for putting those words together.
I screwed it up last week, so.
Or even a whole bunch of other stuff, because orders over $30 include free shipping. And at Fansets, enter the very special Trek Geeks discount code Bashir. That's BASHIR in all capital letters for 15% off your entire order. This bonus code will be available to use until Wednesday, May 13th, 2020 at midnight Eastern Daylight Time.
Fansets. Our pins have character. And we thank our friends at Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of Trek Geeks. So from time to time, Bill and I enjoy welcoming special guests to the show. And I really have to be honest here, guys. This one is really special. You've seen him in Game of Thrones as Duran Martell. You've seen him in 24 as Amri al-Assad, and Batman fans will instantly recognize him as Ra's al Ghul on Gotham. But for us here on Trek Geeks, he will always be the doctor who wanted to practice real frontier medicine, to be out on the farthest reaches of the galaxy where heroes were made. To us, he will always be Dr. Julian Bashir. It is our honor, it is our privilege to welcome the one and only Alexander Siddig to Trek Geeks. And Sid, man, this is just awesome. Welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you very much. I'm blown away by that introduction. Thank you. That's huge. That's way more than I deserve. But thank you. Thank you. That's really very, very kind.
It's really the best he ever does on this show. I mean, from here on in, it's all downhill.
Oh, God.
Well,
It took me 18 hours to write that.
He's not lying, and he checked it with me every time.
Like a
He's
fifth draft, was it?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, his name was definitely Julian Bashir.
It's funny because before you came on, we were going to joke with you and say, so Sid, what was it like to play Chakotay all those years on Voyager?
Yeah. God, people would be so disappointed if I was Chakotay. Oh, gosh. Yeah.
So before we get too deep into Star Trek and other things, the nature of everything that's going on now, first things first, how are you? How is your family? Is everybody healthy and safe right now?
Thank you for asking. Yes, we are. We're inside a lot. And my wife and I, actually, my mother-in-law is part of this group. The only people who are, my wife would rather stay with her mother than stay with me. So we struck a deal. And that is like, okay, well, you spend a couple of days with me, and then you spend a couple of days with your mom checking up on her. And she keeps us all honest. So I do all the shopping and all that stuff. I'm the one who has to be kind of hermetically sealed to make sure that I don't get infected, which then infects her, which then infects her mom. So we're playing it really safe. And you know what? We're fine. Thank goodness.
Good.
We are
Good.
In a relative, there's terrible things happening down the road in the Holyoke Veterans Home. But by and large, I think we are in a corridor between the hotspots on the east and west of Massachusetts. Basically, the New York kind of borders, Connecticut, obviously, but wherever those guys all came across the border, it's been very difficult for them.
Yeah.
But this middle bit, all the way down the middle, seems to be relatively okay, and we're just not taking any chances. And it's just the idea that this is the most sophisticated virus ever because it's so darn simple. It's like a clown that comes to entertain your children and leaves them kind of undisturbed, and then the children wander off and infect everybody. And it's mind-blowing. So we have to be really careful about what we could possibly do to other people. So there's no way I'm seeing my son because goodness knows what 23-year-old kids in Los Angeles are up to.
Man.
I can remember being 23 myself and the discipline it would take to not go out,
right?
Not even have a secret party. I think they may get herd immunity before we do. Put it this way.
Possibly, yeah.
We've been very lucky up here in New Hampshire as well. Nobody that I know has had any brushes with the pandemic. Of course, everybody being home. Of course, luckily everybody's safe. I know everybody is safe in Bill's family, so we're really happy to hear that everybody's doing well with your family, Sid.
Thank you.
Now, I'm sure you've been asked this 1,000 times. So I'm going to kind of word it a little bit differently. And that question is whether or not you would want to be on Star Trek Picard. So the Star Trek universe is continuing to expand with new shows like Discovery and, of course, Picard and other unannounced shows that the general public doesn't know about. And in Picard, they brought back folks like Data and Troy and Riker in ways that actually were a lot more than just plain old fan service. So my question is, if the opportunity presents itself in the future, would you be interested in returning to the role of Julian Bashir if it made sense and was a really good reason to do so?
Absolutely. You can't deny people the right to, he's not just my character. He belongs to a lot of people. And for me to sort of go, no, you may not see this one ever again. would be harsh. And
Yes.
and the way you put it, which is absolutely what I would normally have to say, with a caveat that I would add when people ask me whether I'd like to, and I haven't been asked that many times, would it like to be on something like Picard? Of course, and Patrick, what an honor to work with him. And I think he's got kind of a whole bunch of the band back together, with Jonathan directing again and
Right.
all that stuff. And obviously, Jonathan's become an eminent director in his own right. So it would be great if the idea was just honest and great for the people who really want to see what happened to Bashir.
Now, on that note, when Deep Space Nine started, TNG was still on the air, and there was the kind of a melding of the cast for at least a couple of episodes. Did you ever have the opportunity to sit and talk with Sir Patrick? Or I don't believe we saw you on screen with him at any time, but did you get to hang out with him and talk about Star Trek or other things?
Absolutely. We didn't talk about Star Trek, but we did hang out. I mean, once or twice. It wasn't very often, but he invited kindly the very first year. He invited me into his trailer, and we sat down and talked. I think he overheard my British accent, and was like, "Let me tell you about the Royal Shakespeare Company," and off we went. And it was terrific. And he's one of the. I think he's probably up there with the Spocks and Shatners, Kirks of the most iconic Star Trek characters. I was a big fan of The Next Generation before I even was on Deep Space Nine, because I used to watch the videos at Blockbuster, from Blockbuster. Remember, anyone who's old enough to remember Blockbuster? We used to have to go and rent video. We had to rewind them before we returned them.
That's right.
Let me tell you, I worked in a local video store in Nashua, New Hampshire for more than 20 years, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think we're all of us.
Next gen. Sorry,
yeah, I think we're all of a certain age in this particular conversation. Yeah. Men who are looking fantastic in their north of 40 years. Oh. We'll say it kindly that way.
Easily.
Yeah, easily. I haven't talked about this very often, but in rewatching Deep Space Nine, I've come to discover that Julian Bashir is probably one of my favorite characters in the entire series, and possibly throughout the whole of Star Trek. And I say that because his arc is very different over the 7 years, but eventually he becomes the kind of bold character who is not afraid to speak truth to power. That's something that has always struck me, especially in his conversation with Admiral Ross in the episode Inter Arma Einem Sealant Leges.
Wow, nicely said.
Nice.
I only know that phrase because of that episode.
Me too, by the way.
Yeah. If Dan had tried to say that, we'd be here all day.
Something about ants. That's all I know.
Something about ants.
Oh, Dan.
We do this a lot, Sid. Don't mind us.
He's sweet, though. He's sweet.
Until you get to know him, really. We're looking at 25 years on in our friendship, and really, the shoe is off the rose. But do you find the same quality about Bashir, having portrayed him? Do you think he eventually became that sort of character that really kind of stands for the whole of Star Trek and standing up for what is right, despite what it costs him? Yeah,
I mean, I thank you, by the way, for those words. But I really love that character. Partly because you can't really play a character on TV unless you've got prosthetics on, where you just aren't betraying elements of you all the time, because you just have to lean on it. You have to lean on who you are when you get up in the morning and go in and do some wild thing with emus running around deck. And then you just got to kind of go, well, I've got me. I'll do what I would do. And I played him about 2 or 3 years younger than I was, to be ahead of the curve. And I just thought the way he developed was fantastic. I thought the way he started is what made him fantastic. And he didn't start off as a finished product, and he didn't. So people really did get to see him grow up on camera. And I've heard so many times from people who I've talked to how that they knew so many doctors at med school, young doctors, aspiring doctors, who were just like him, brash and kind of dumb at the same time as being incredibly bright. Not street smart for sure. And his amazing inability to seduce anybody until much, much later in his life, except perhaps Garak.
Right.
Yep.
So it was, I mean, I just was born lucky to get that role. And Ira Burr and Michael Piller and the late Michael Piller, the late great Michael Piller, and Rick Berman, they just said, yeah, let's go with it. Let's go. Let's find something else. And in looking for some way to get Bashir into the show, because he was the studio bosses wanted to fire me for the first 3 seasons.
Oh, wow.
Because the numbers weren't good. The numbers weren't good for Bashir. They weren't good for the show. At the time, it was all just too different. And The Next Generation was so fantastic, but it was a fantastic, completely different type of drama. It wasn't linear like the Deep Space Nine was. It couldn't get too involved in characters in case people watched the show out of order, because it was based on people watching the show in any order. So you landed on a place, you got involved with someone, boom, you kicked their ass and got the hell out. And we just didn't do that. And there was only a couple of shows, and I'm not even sure Deep Space Nine wasn't the first, but certainly there were only a few shows like Buffy, The Vampire Slayer, and X-Files that were really breaking the mold of how TV was delivered. And you had to watch everyone in order, like reading a book.
Right.
And that paid off in the end for audiences, because obviously now every show is like that.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't want just standalone shows, except, there might be some, but I can't imagine what they are. You don't want to watch a drama like you watch a sports game. You want to watch a drama like you read a book. And that's basically how that works. And so that the nature of how that plan, which was definitely Gene Roddenberry who bought into it, because he obviously knew about the show. He passed just before we started filming. And Majel, who was incredibly influential, his wife, a widow back then, and Michael Piller, who was genius wonder kid writer, and Ira, who is this. I'm sure if you haven't talked to Ira yet, you better, because that dude will stir things up. I was really careful not to say the wrong word there.
That's okay. You can say whatever you want to.
I like to be able to have family viewing, but he comes in with his purple beard, blue beard,
yep.
whatever the hell color it is, electric blue.
Yes.
That guy can concoct an interesting storyline, and when it came to it with characters like Bashir, who he wasn't particularly invested in. I think Ron Moore was more interested in Bashir. He was like, yeah, go ahead, see what you can do. See if you can pull him out of the gutter. See if you can get him popular. And then they wrote this show called Our Man Bashir. And it was almost overnight, the change. You turned him into James Bond. And my goodness, everybody thought it was great. And then they began to get it. And they began to be okay with the fact that he was a little Doogie Howser-ish, and that he had to grow into the role, And so by the end, he's fairly formidable. And I wouldn't take him on. He can look after himself.
Yeah, very much so. I think that's really the thing. So when they developed the whole genetically enhanced part of the character arc, was that due in part to the feedback from fans or the network, or did they just feel that they really wanted to turn the character on his ear?
I think they wanted to surprise me, although they wouldn't say it. And they certainly did surprise me. I mean, I learned on the sort of Thursday to shoot on Tuesday that I was genetically enhanced. So I didn't have any time to build it, backfill it into the character, which is probably a good thing. I was furious at the time. I was really angry. And I was determined to get rid of the idea because I just loved his humanity. And the minute you turned him into a genetically enhanced person, it was like, oh, no wonder, Of course he can do that because he's genetically enhanced. But I'm much more interested in not being able to do something. and failing at things, because that's what we kind of do. I mean, we're sitting in this coronavirus world right now, which in a weird way is a testament to our group communal failure. And we just have to have some role models on TV that fail. And Bashir kind of failed upwards, and now I'm okay with the whole genetically enhanced thing. Now I can understand it because I'm a bit more mature. But at the time I was furious. I was probably only about 30 when that storyline started. So I was quite a young kid when all that happened. But yeah, I remember having to, do math calculations very quickly while we were on the Defiant, trajectories of missiles and things like that in one episode. And I was like, really? So you actually want to make me data? Because you're worried about our failing ratings. So you get Worf to bring him along, and then you try and turn Bashir into data. And it's like, maybe we could, and there was definitely pressure from the studio to make that happen. But once the show got set, that was it. And there was no way it was going to become the next generation. And I am so happy it didn't, because we gave fans an alternative. And people who love Next Generation, which most fans do, like me, can also love Deep Space Nine. It's not sort of, they're not mutually something. There's a word. The famous phrase, mutually, I can't remember it, but it doesn't matter. I'm getting old.
All right.
You fit right in on the show, man.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you
so, two things. I have a quick follow-up. First of all, just so that you know, Bill and I, Deep Space Nine is our all-time favorite series. So just want to throw that out there. And I have a quick follow-up.
Mutually exclusive. Mutually exclusive.
Right? Exclusive.
Thank
there we go. I knew. See, I wouldn't get it, but you were able to get it in there. In regards to the storyline of being genetically enhanced and how you just found out right before filming, was it the same for being involved with Section 31 and having Bill Sadler on as a guest star for that arc as well?
Yeah, that was a total shock too. That was great, though. I mean, I really loved that. I thought that was kind of sexy, and because he's so unlikely to be that guy. Mm-hmm. And when that happened, that was the perfect next step for Bashir, who had been a kind of Bond, don't forget. And he'd also almost wiped out the entire population of a planet by being reckless. Mm-hmm. And so this guy had learned the hard way, and and I think he was pretty much a veteran by then. And it just seemed like a natural thing to happen. And it caught the imagination so much that the new CBS, newish, Discovery, delves into Section 31 a lot.
Yes. Yep.
And I do wonder sometimes about, because I don't think you ever leave Section 31. You see. So he was pretty senior. Sort of early days.
That brings up a good question. Have you kept up with what happens with Julian and say like Star Trek novels and such at any time?
No, I haven't. Not at all.
I'll tell you, I love reading the Star Trek novels, and there are some fantastic ones that focus specifically on Julian. He has saved the Andorians from total annihilation. He has been charged with being a criminal by the Federation. He has lost his medical license. He has been exonerated by the Federation president, and he has become a double agent in Section 31 so that he can try to take it down. So, I mean, he's pretty busy. And he's with Serena Douglas now and not Esri, which I found very interesting. So she's back in his life. Wow. So lots of cool stuff going on.
He's huge. Yeah, you know what? I think about the whole Deep Space Nine thing, which Section 31 really interested me at the time, because we weren't at war yet, with the rest of the world. Right. We were in a relatively peaceful period, but we were having enormous problems with terrorists. Even back then, right up until 1998, 1999, that time. Bin Laden was just kind of training in the Sudan, and things were cooking. And what Deep Space Nine did for the first time, which I thought was really interesting, was say that the Federation wasn't perfect, and that was sacrilege for a lot of Star Trek fans. But it mirrored what was happening in the world with the United Nations. and America and Europe and Great Britain, all those things. Whereas we began to see I don't know if we began, people were seeing problems with, democracy and married to capitalism for years. But it was something that became kind of, at least became apparent to me during the filming of the show. It's like, whoa, the feds aren't perfect. They don't always make the wisest decisions. Mm-hmm. And obviously the films and things have exploited these ideas much more since then. But to watch The Next Generation, they always did the right thing. Yep. And Deep Space Nine, suddenly they weren't doing the right thing. And all the time. They had their heart in the right place. And I think Bashir is really a symbol of that, in a sense that he gets darker as the Federation gets darker. This naive, ex-naive, innocent, lovely young man gets darker and darker and darker. And I can well imagine him as in those fiction, the new fan fiction, getting arrested. And I can well imagine him, doing some horrifying things because, we remember the horrifying things that happened even with our own secret services and rendition and all sorts of things that we thought were illegal, but happened anyway. Right. So I think that Deep Space Nine taking on those issues was actually really good, really freeing for Star Trek. And I don't think Star Trek has looked back since. I think now that there is more nuanced look at the Federation and who they are.
We'll get back to our conversation with Alexander Siddig in just a minute, but we want to take a moment to talk about a wonderful small business that makes one of the coolest products ever. Their name is Science Division, and oh yeah, they make tribbles.
It's interesting though, man, because you would think making such a dangerous thing would be frowned upon, but wait, that's right, Bill. Tribbles are not dangerous. Yes, that's right. They're soft. They make a pleasant sound, and they warn you when Klingons are near. And now you can purchase your own officially licensed Tribble and actually control it with your iOS or Android phone. I mean, that is just so cool. You can name your Tribble through the Section K7 app, and you can even choose what ship it's assigned to, man.
That's right, Dan. And whether you use the app or not, your new Tribble will be a welcome addition to your Trek family. They have 3 modes. There's At Ease, where they're happy and content, kind of like me when I don't talk to Dan. There's On Duty, which is a random mix of happy and angry sounds, which is kind of when I'm talking to Dan. And there's Watchdog, where they sound largely like Dan, pretty much angry and loud. The app also has an attack button, which makes your Tribble scream on demand at friends, family, or especially annoying podcast partners.
That's right. Now, it's no secret that we support small businesses, and Science Division fits the bill perfectly. They are a husband and wife team, Jay and Kalia, who are huge Star Trek fans. Her childhood dream was to own a real Tribble, and now you can live that dream too, thanks to this new awesome product from Science Division.
And the best part is the response from our listeners to the Trek Geeks Podcast Network has been so great that they are now offering a special $5 discount code just for Trek Geeks listeners. So head on over to sciencediv.com. That's sciencediv.com to place your order. Now, normally these beauties go for $69.99, but if you enter the special code GEEKS, that's GEEKS, you will get $5 off your order. I think that's fantastic. Now, this offer code is valid until May 20th, 2020 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Science Division. Trouble's never been this fun, and we thank our friends at Science Division for sponsoring this week's episode.
It's interesting to me because, as you know, we've been doing this podcast now for about 5 years, and in that time, we have had so many people tell us that Deep Space Nine has become their favorite series.
I've heard that.
It may not have started off that way, but it has become that way now, partly because of the nuance and the realism and the grittiness. Is the Sid of today surprised at that at all? Because at the time, 25 plus years ago, it wasn't necessarily everybody's favorite. And how does that make you feel?
Yeah, they wouldn't feed us to the animals back then. And they really, and we just survived because they had to keep the show running because they'd invested so much money in it, and the merchandising was making so much cash. And it would have been a catastrophic admission of failure for a Star Trek series not to go through the full. It wasn't until several shows later that they actually risked canceling a Star Trek show.
Right.
Yeah, they dragged us through the mud. But we were fine. We were just kind of happy campers hanging out, 9 or 10 of us, including a couple of guest stars, happy to see each other, happy to take the paycheck, and happy to be working under the radar, really, because we were allowed to do things no one else. I mean, the studio execs at the time just simply weren't interested in what we were doing. They just didn't bother turning up to inspect us. They didn't care what our hair looked like. You ask Patrick or Jonathan or LeVar or Brent or any of those guys, they'll say the studio was breathing down our necks all the time. I couldn't get a haircut. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. They honestly didn't care if we got run over. They were like, fine, find another one.
Wow.
So that was freeing. It was people like Armin and who was one of the most popular characters on the show, could really get jiggy with his character. And there was some, and we had an African American captain way before Obama, and he began to grow as the longer and more comfortable he got, and once he started to direct, and everyone realized just how formidable Mr. Brooks is. I don't know what he's up to now. Have you got him on? Have you had a chat to him?
No, I don't think anybody's seen him since the last time he did Star Trek Las Vegas.
Okay.
I think he's pretty much at home in New Jersey, and I think that he thinks he's said all he has to say about Star Trek, and that's fine if that's the answer. But what a force of nature Avery Brooks is.
Yeah.
Were you at all intimidated the first time you had to do a scene with him?
No, I wasn't, but I was intimidated by him as a man.
Okay, I can see that.
But as an actor, I just did my thing. I just got with my thing. And it was plenty for me just to try and remember my lines and turn up to work on time. Remember, I was only in my mid-20s. It's like, oh my God, I'm still playing Ultima Online. I should be at work in 3 minutes. Oh my goodness. And I spent so long playing computer games because, when I first started, I was getting $7,500 an episode, and which isn't huge money, but to me, boy, it was huge. And so I bought a green car that I just liked the look of in the window, and what was it? It's a Chrysler LeBaron, a convertible Chrysler LeBaron. I was like, I'll have that, and they went, this one? I was like, yeah, I'll drive it out today. Here's your $15,000. See ya. And I bought these incredibly expensive computer setup with editing suite and everything, and played computer games until about 4:00 every morning. To the point where they thought I was having problems with drugs, and so they called me in to the office and said, "Hey, so we'd like you to know that we're going to support you, whatever you say next. Are you taking a lot of cocaine?" I was like,
wow.
What? Cocaine? No. You look tired all the time. It's like, oh, I play a lot of computer games.
And I'm driving a LeBaron.
And check this, LeBaron. Dude. We drove all the way to Vegas with the top down, which is not a smart idea. And listening to Counting Crows the whole way.
Wow. That's dating.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
now,
man.
During the pandemic,
Avery was special. Sorry, I didn't finish my
no problem.
praise of Avery. He was a special human being, and he is a special human being. And he took me under his wing because Sarok was a bit younger then, but because I was born in Africa, and he's an African American. We saw something there together, and he gave me books on African American experience, especially Cornel West. He loved Cornel West.
Oh wow!
And he'd say, "What do you think?" He gave me a copy of Race Matters and said, "I'll read it and tell me what you think." So we talk about being African American, and it was interesting. It was that was really interesting. He's a very strong human being.
That's one person that unfortunately I never got the chance to meet at any conventions. I started going to STLV a little later than Bill, so I didn't get to meet him. But you brought up video games just a second ago, and during the pandemic, do you still play? Do you still do online gaming or anything like that?
Absolutely. I've been playing this morning. It's basically
You're so awesome.
I have Zoom chats with people, and we're producing a couple of TV shows, so that's taking up some time. But that's the only kind of work that I can boast to doing. As an actor, without a project, I'm just a nothing. I'm not an actor. I'm not a cook. I'm nothing. So I've got to just do something. My wife just, says, well, just has let me off the leash. I can play as much Xbox there, sitting over there, as I like. And so I'm playing a game called The Division 2, which is a shoot 'em up, but it's kind of very cool. It's it's got a lot more to it. It's not quite just a command and not a Call of Duty type shoot 'em up where you run around a room with 15 7-year-olds and get shot in the face. It's a bit more interesting and complicated and tactical. But I'm a massive MMORP fanatic. This is my first real move away from the MMORPs. And MMORP is so hard to say. It's like LGBT+.
It is.
World of Warcraft?
World of Warcraft was way too popular, so I didn't play it. I was too big, not doing that. Yep. So I played the Elder Scrolls.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I played EverQuest back in the day.
That was my first
one. I played Lord of the Rings online.
Mm-hmm.
I gave my voice to Star Trek Online, but I didn't.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
How are you not playing that?
I know. It's kind of weird.
That's weird.
I did offer to play to the guys when I was recording my voice, and I said, "Listen, let's do an Easter egg. Let's give me a subscription or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Let me get through. Give me some time. Let me get through some levels. Let me get up to a respectable level. And if someone can figure out the answer to a challenge, you get in touch with me 3 or 4 days before to say you will receive your reward on that day at that time, and they will have my voice absolutely coming through live, saying exactly what they want me to say." But they didn't.
That'd be awesome.
They didn't bite. I know.
Oh man!
A live experience in a computer game. Can you imagine? Actually meeting a live actor who's, if you say, "What's your name? What colors? What's the weather like?" You get it right. It's not an AI.
Wow.
Right now, they could be doing gaming with Sid, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
No.
We all missed an opportunity there.
I suppose. Speaking of special people, we'd be remiss if we didn't take a moment to talk about one of our favorite actors that we've ever seen, Rene Auberjonois, and of course Aaron Eisenberg, both of whom were huge losses to the Deep Space Nine family. You worked with both of them many times. I have to imagine that, well, I've heard Rene described by many as their favorite actor, including some other actors. Tell us about working with the two of them and the impression that it left you with.
Okay, two wildly different human beings. Rene was one of the most educated actors I've ever worked with, and had an enormous breadth of experience. I think he was probably one of America's finest character actors. And whether from you name it, he will pop up everywhere. He eventually, in the last days, he popped up on Madam Secretary, as this crazy NASA guy. But what an amazing guy, and I got to know him. I was lucky enough to get to know him and his quite astonishing wife, Judith. We'd often meet up as a cast. One of the things that was lovely about the whole show, and about probably being unpopular, if that's the right word at the time, is that we didn't really become brats. And we loved to hang out with each other. We loved to spend some time with each other. And we would do, holidays and stuff. Or Armin would throw a party. And Armin and Rene were incredibly close. And Andy Robinson. Those guys go back years, Their pros have been on this circuit for hundreds of years. And I was this whippersnapper who came in from England. And Rene was really kind to me. And would always help me if I had anything to ask, although I very rarely would dare ask anything. But he's just a lovely human being. And And I know he has a wonderful daughter and a wonderful wife who survive him. And I hope they're doing just fine. And if I had anything to say to I don't need to say anything to Renee. Renee is doing probably what he likes doing best right now. But I'm sure his daughter and certainly his wife would probably say, if the death of my own mother is anything to go by, that they haven't really lost him. Mm-hmm. He's with them all the time, and that's the beauty of having family and loved ones and of being a good guy. That is really lasts forever. You are kind of immortal because people remember how terrific you were. Now, Aaron couldn't be more different. He came on the show as a kid. Now, he wasn't a kid, but he was very young. And he was obviously tiny, which is one of his things. And he was always eager to learn, always trying to get some information about how to do something better and how to be quicker and how to be the best. And he didn't mind who he took advice of, even idiots like me. And he was just a bright light. And I had a very close relationship with him, mainly on conventions, because I ended up living in a different country. But boy, when we saw each other, we got on like a house on fire. He would always make fun of me any way he could, always some sarcastic quip, some comment, that would make everybody laugh. And I met his family. We all knew each other so well. And I'm sure you've talked to others. Like Nana was a close friend of Renee's, for example. I was pretty close to Aaron. And I miss them. I miss them both. And it's a shame we won't be able to do some crazy thing on stage at the convention or some crazy thing on camera again.
No doubt.
One of the things that I just punch myself in the face over time and time again is over the last couple of years at conventions, I have gone up to Aaron's table and Renee's table to say hi, get an autograph, get a picture, but they were always busy doing something. Didn't want to bother them, so I stepped back. Just one of those moments that you just wish that you hadn't. You never know. You never know what's going to happen.
It's a good lesson.
It is very good.
Yeah.
It's funny because Aaron once employed us to play a prank on Garrett Wong from Voyager. We were at a convention in upstate New York, and we were in the dealer's room set up, recording the podcast. And Aaron came over and took Garrett's table card with his name and put it on the card table that was next to our booth. And he goes, "Is this okay if I put this here?" I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, he had Garrett's table removed from the dealer's room. And left Garrett's, 8x10s and the table card there. And when Garrett came in the room, he's like, "Oh, where am I supposed to be?" And he found the card table. He goes, "What's this?"
That is funny. That is really funny. That is him. He's a prank.
Yeah. He was always doing stuff like that. That whole weekend he was doing stuff.
Oh yeah.
So Sid, Bill mentioned this a little while ago. Bill and I have been friends for 25 years, and we've been doing the podcast for 5 years. And one of the things we like to describe the podcast is that it's our friendship through the veil of Star Trek. We love talking about Star Trek through our friendship. We always have fun insults back and forth to each other, and we have a great time.
Yeah.
Your character's friendship with Chief O'Brien was probably one of the closest friendships in any Star Trek series ever that has been on.
Yeah.
Did that friendship grow outside of the characters? And was it easy for that to happen based on what you guys were together so much during shooting?
It did. It didn't to the degree that we were close on set. I mean, what made us kind of click on set was the fact that we were chalk and cheese, oil and vinegar. There's just no way no way they would get together. It's just, this is the most blue collar dude and the most kind of white collar dude hanging out and having fun. And obviously one is British sounding and one is Irish sounding, and those guys don't get on well. So that was the kind of magic, was the kind of opposites attract type deal. And we kind of were close-ish on the outside. I liked his company, and we would often do stuff, but we were so different that in real life it didn't quite work out. You know? So, but we did. I mean, I did memorable things with him. I one night we visited, I think, every Irish bar in central Los Angeles. On St. Patrick's night, we hired a limousine, just the two of us, and we went to every single bar. And we got ridiculously drunk. And that was good. That was good fun. We had a great evening. And we would do the occasional thing like that. We'd just do something great. But as a person, I'm not gregarious. I'm not outward, and I'm not. I don't mix a lot with people. I don't go to parties very much. I didn't even then. I was quite shy, and I really hated being the center of attention anywhere. And that was bad before I became a TV personality. And after that, of course, it became really difficult because if you went to most parties, it was like, oh, here's that actor, here's that dude.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I wish the ground would swallow me up. So I just ended up not going to many parties. But I didn't ever. I was the one who just didn't have enough courage to go and talk to a girl. And, love had to fall into my lap for it to sort of pan out. Because I just never got my act together to go and see anybody. And so Miles is much more gregarious and outward looking and likes a good drink in a bar and likes a good fight, likes a good conversation. And if he can fight, even better. Exactly. So we did hang out because of our relationship on the show, interestingly, but we didn't get super close. We don't, for example, really know each other anymore. Although I like him very, very much. Yeah.
It's I'm going to change it up a little bit now and ask you about. I'm a big Batman fan. I'm not going to lie.
Oh yeah.
And obviously, on Gotham, you had the opportunity to portray a character which really only, I'd say, less than 5 men have ever portrayed on screen.
That was
Ra's al Ghul. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that because I mean, this is a character that is really deep in the Batman mythos and has a huge responsibility in the creation of Batman. Let's talk about that experience and your approach to play that particular character.
Well, I will say right off the bat that I really enjoyed Gotham. I think there's some really fine acting in that show. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about it. As from a professional point of view, it's amazing that a lot of those guys are really good.
Yeah.
But I was a little disappointed with what happened to Ra's al Ghul, to be honest. I was expecting a bit more something with the young proto Batman.
Right.
I just expected it'd be a bit more interesting, and I think he went way too a bit too villainous and not. He didn't get the ambiguity of Ra's al Ghul. I think Ra's al Ghul is really ambiguous. He is not a villain and he's not a good guy, because he is incredibly pragmatic. He does the thing to get the job done, and that's what he was going to teach Batman, that you can be a little darker than you are. You can, toughen up a bit. And they kind of just went away from that. I think there was a point where I was supposed to be a love interest for one of those characters. Anyway, it petered off into a kind of, sometimes as an actor, you get, and I feel that happens to me quite a bit. You come into a show in like the 3rd or 2nd or 4th season because the ratings are doing some wobbling around, and they say, well, we're going to get another character in. And they call it stunt casting. And you get someone that everybody knows within the genre. And you bring him in and everyone goes, woo, I'll watch this for another season now because this guy's come in. And I think they did that. And I've got the sense they didn't really have a plan for the character. Although I do really like the show.
That's awesome. It's interesting to think that, of all the actors that have played Ra's al Ghul, you've got in the animated series, it was David Warner. Obviously in the Nolan films, it was Liam Neeson. They dealt with that character a little bit in the Arrow universe. But really to most of mainstream people who haven't seen a lot of that other stuff, you were it. And I thought you were fantastic.
Thank you.
Honestly.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I was lucky to be given the opportunity. I also think that ethnically I fit the bill,
Yes.
It was a little weird seeing Liam Neeson up in a kind of
a little bit
the Himalayas or Tibet or somewhere going, feel the force loop.
You've taken part in a lot of shows that are kind of built into entertainment history. Of course, Star Trek and Gotham and also Game of Thrones. I mean, that was just so big in the day. And you got to play Duran Martell. What was that like? For me personally, unfortunately, I didn't think we got to see you enough in that show. Yeah. And you didn't get to move around a whole lot. But that's okay.
Yeah.
But what was it like on that show?
I really like the challenge of being in a wheelchair, and I really like the idea that. I like the challenge of the whole character. I like the family that he represented. I like especially his brother who had just one show, who had his that fight. It's just one of the great moments. He maybe had two shows, but it felt like he had just the one show, and it was just an honor to be kind of this guy's brother. Yeah. I really kind of think that something happened during that season that I'm not aware of still to this day, so I can only speculate. But I was contracted to do quite a lot more of the show. And then suddenly I got a call that said, look, all good things come to an end. Very sweet call from, I think, both the showrunners. I was in a hotel in Los Angeles. I remember now. And I was like, what? And they said, well, I don't think you're going to come back for one show and we're going to finish. We're going to kill the guy off. Everybody dies on Game of Thrones, so don't be upset. And I was like, actually, I'm upset because this guy hadn't even really got going. And what that show, I don't know, who knows what the show needs and what it doesn't need, because it's one of the most successful shows of all time. So no one should listen to me about what it needed. But what I felt I was going to bring to the show was a depth of generosity that worked.
Absolutely.
That goodness could work. That it wasn't only wicked that works. It wasn't only evil that only wins every time. No doubt about it. And I'm not a Jon Snow character, so who's the only other kind of person I felt that was, or the little girl, I can't remember her name, and Arya.
That's my dog's name too.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It's great. Good name. And so it was, I just wanted to do I wanted to get something going on that front. Even if I turned out to be really evil, that would have been interesting. But the way he started was cool. And then he just kind of went. And I think what happened was that they realized they were going to wrap up the show. And they didn't want us open a new box. They didn't want to start another storyline that they couldn't get rid of by the time they needed to wrap up the show. So they started to kill off people that were going to be loose ends if they didn't do it, because they only had 2 more years left.
Sure.
And they know the story way ahead of time. So that's my guess. My final guess is that they just went, we're finishing the show in 2 years. We've just opened this box and we don't want this gift because it's just going to be too complicated for the last 2 years. And famously, they had enormous trouble wrapping up the show in the last season.
Yep.
So imagine they had Duran to deal with as well. And no idea how to do this. So I think they just went, this is more trouble than we can handle. We're going to get rid of this guy now.
Before we wrap up with you today, we had a couple of questions from our official Facebook group, Camp Kittimer, just to pose a couple to you, some quick hits. Chris Powers asks if you were a Trek fan before Deep Space Nine.
I was, Chris. And you know what? I went down to Blockbusters in Tooting in London, which is a part of London where I lived. And I lived with another actor called Paul Baisley, and I would watch The Next Generation, partly because a friend of mine called Colin Kerrigan put me onto the show. So when I got the audition to be in Deep Space Nine, it came through anonymously through my agent and the casting director, and I was like, wow, I wonder what I'm playing. Maybe I'm going to be like Deanna Troy's long lost brother, because I felt Deanna Troy and I had something in common. We had slightly darker skin, and we're both kind of British. Yeah. So I figured I thought it was an audition for The Next Generation. And I went ahead and did it. And it was pretty easy, actually. I remember going, this is pretty easy. All I have to do is say no. So I went in and went, no. And they were like, terrific, we'll be in touch. So, okay, good. And they were in touch. Awesome. And that was 4 days later, I flew out to America. And I did it again. I just said no. And everyone was like, oh, it was really great.
Oh man,
yeah, it was really good. I'm weeping. And it turned out that they'd seen me in another show, and because they'd seen me in another show, Rick Berman just ordered that I come to the show, but they had to go through the dance of me auditioning. Yeah. So they made it as simple as possible, not to waste anyone's time. So I just was like, no. Good. And that's all because I really enjoyed The Next Generation. Otherwise, I may not even have done the audition, because I may not have known what Star Trek was. And
wow.
So it was just, I really liked it. And so it came from that, and not being Diana Troy's long lost cousin or whatever.
And then we have another question from Angela Stiles, who asks, what was your favorite scene or scenes that you played?
Hi, Angela, first of all. Kind of a lot of scenes I really enjoyed, and so many of them. Something has happened to modern TV where people have realized that you can just make 6 shows a year, and everybody's like, this is a good show. Yeah. But we had to make dozens of the damn things. Yep. But it's difficult to say the actual scene. I would be a liar if I didn't say I hated being in bed with Esri Dax. I just have to get that out there.
We get it. It's okay. You're among friends here.
Yeah, thank you. I absolutely loved almost everything in Trials and Tribulations, and we had some great scenes, especially Miles and I in that show. I examined my own wife as a doctor, and she was Major Kira, of course. But
right,
my wife to be weren't married even, and our own son was in the show because I was examining her belly. So I got to meet my son on Star Trek in a weird way. So that was kind of crazy and wonderful.
Let me jump in for a quick second, Sid. One of the things that I love best about that whole storyline is Nana's line to you in that episode when you're arguing about it, and she looks at Bashir and says, remember, you did this to me. Because Bashir, and it's like, yeah, he did that to her. That was great.
It happens. Yeah. Absolutely. That was funny. That was the showrunners Ira having a laugh at us. We really enjoyed that.
That was good. Well, Sid, I want to take a few minutes here to talk to you about something that is very, very important to me. We've had the honor of having several cast of DS9 on the show over the years. We've had Nana, we've had Andy Robertson, we've had J.G. Hertzler, we've had Bill Sadler. And for all of these discussions, I've made it a point to say to them what I want to say to you. Back in early 2000, I had gone through an extremely bad time. And it got so bad that one night I had a revolver in my mouth and I had the hammer pulled back. And I was ready. And it was going to happen. And for some reason, I had a VHS tape of Deep Space Nine playing on my TV in front of me that night. And the episode Captive Pursuit was on, where Miles befriends Tosk And he talks about how every life is important, and he was risking his career to save Tosk. That episode saved my life.
Wow.
You and all of the cast of the show are the reason why I am alive today. So I want to take the moment here talking to you to thank you. My life is as perfect now as I could possibly ever wish for.
Good. And
it's because of what you and the rest of the cast did with your craft to bring those stories to life. That episode is the one that saved me, but the rest of the journey of Deep Space Nine is what kept me going during my difficult time. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you, sir.
Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for letting me know. That's very kind of you. And you're welcome. You know, that's basically all I can say. You are,
even though I have to put up with this guy every week on the podcast, it's still.
But you're welcome on this planet. You're welcome.
He sure knows. He sure knows how to kill a conversation, doesn't he?
Yeah, I got
it. Sid, thank you so much for taking a little bit of your time to share some of your joyfulness and your just fantastic attitude. It's been so great to talk to you today. We hope that someday when you have nothing else going on and you're cooped up in a house, you'll think of talking to these two idiots again. You know, when you don't have actual work going on.
Well, we should do it next week.
Coming in 2022, the Sid Talks to Geeks podcast, exclusively on the Trek Geeks Network. Wow, buddy, what a conversation. We could have talked to Sid literally for hours. And I hope we get the chance to talk to him again someday, because what a joyful guy.
Deep Space Nine is over 25 years old now. And you would think that the way he talks about it, it just ended last week. He is in love with that show and that character still to this day. And I think that's something that we're not used to seeing with people that have done a lot of different acting gigs in their career. You know, you have one gig and then you go to the next one and then you go to the next one. And a lot of people don't even watch what they do on television. But I have the sneaking suspicion that Sid watched what he did on the show. And you can tell by the way he talks about the past that he really loves the character of Bashir.
Oh, that much is very obvious. And it's interesting that he has an affinity for, it seems like, all the characters he's played. I mean, He talks very fondly about the way he wanted to portray Raj Al Ghul, about the Game of Thrones gig. Yeah. I think he walks into it with a clear mindset of what he wants to do. And in the case of Bashir, we were lucky enough to have 7 seasons of it, which is fantastic.
And just hearing that he was not happy with the genetically engineered storyline just blew me away. I thought that was great he didn't like that, but ended up being a pretty cool gig, I think. I think he liked it.
I have to agree. Dan, you know what else is a cool gig? Being a member of the band 5 Year Mission. As the unofficial 6th member of the band, I can tell you that.
Oh, okay.
Hey, I can't help it. I mean, we all have our assigned callings, and mine is to be a guy who doesn't play an instrument in a band. It's magical. It's everything I thought it could be.
I appreciate it.
But, I mean, the other 5 guys do pretty well without me. I mean, they have a whole bunch of albums we want you to download and listen to. Head on out to 5yearmission.net. Get all of 5 Year Mission's music. I mean, there's year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, Spock's Brain, Trouble With Tribbles. We want you to get the discs for all of these, add them to your collection, because you're going to become a huge fan just like we are. That's 5yearmission.net. And thanks to them for all the music they let us use on the network. And of course, if you want to listen to another podcast, there's 5 Year Mission, the podcast, available here at Trek Geeks.
That's amazing. Year 5 is going to come out someday too. That's pretty cool. When
Agreed.
you think about it. Because, Star Trek didn't have a year 5. So it's awesome that 5 Year Mission is going to have a year 5. That's pretty cool. You know what else is cool?
What?
We actually talked about this very episode just last week, buddy. What's even more interesting is this particular storyline. Here we go. Janeway had to make the most difficult of decisions, Bill. After a terrible accident in a recording studio, 2 members of her crew are fused together and become one new individual life form. What does she do? Will she say goodbye to her two friends, or will she bring them back by ending the life of her new crew member? It's a difficult decision, and one that songs are sure to be written about. But in the end, Bill, what will happen to Two Farks? What will happen?
I can't even. Normally I accuse you of not trying. I don't know how much lower I can get this week because that is the lamest one.
It seems to fit though. Last week.
No, it doesn't. It would have fit last week and it still would have been horrendous.
See, I didn't want to, too much of a good thing all at once. You got to spread it out like peanut butter on a piece of bread, baby. Just spread it right out. 2 weeks of Tuvix.
When does the good thing start? Just like Tuvix, I want to beam you into two separate individuals I might be able to tolerate.
Wow, who would they be? Who is Dan? Who is combined to make Dan? That's for next week.
I don't think I can say that on the non-Patreon version.
Wow.
So anyway, 5yearmission.net. Download all their albums. Become a huge fan. Of course, we want to remind everyone listening that you can support the Trek Geeks podcast network via Patreon. There you can see the new designs for both the annual supporters pin and our annual t-shirt for 2020, as well as get unedited audio of all of our podcasts, along with some additional perks, Dan.
Lots of good perks. Every once in a while, I might just jump into an Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation and thank our Patreons like I'm going to do right now, Bill. So we want to take a moment to thank our associate producers on Trek Geeks, Adam Sanders, Brandon Everidge, Heather Sohn, John Krikorian, Rick Tatro, Trey Womack, Sean Lynn, Tim Robertson, Tim Sirdar, Vikram Bhatt, Greg Rozier, Andy Fark, Kimberly Francis, Bill's laughing at me, Ron Robel, Brooke Horton, Christina Werther, Jim McMahon, Luke Burnham, Eric Sakian, Lisa Tomlinson, Jamie McGregor, and the gracious and wonderful Conrad Hutchins.
I love how at the end Schwarzenegger kind of went English.
A little bit.
I can't breathe.
Mission accomplished.
Oh, I know, but for you're hoping it was a much longer duration.
One can hope.
Yeah. Dan, we also want to thank our Trek Geeks producers for their support. They are Ken Tripp, Casey Shafsky, Charlie Mulvey, Chris Trabuzio, Craig Ewing, Eric Extreme, Jackie and Chris Hackney, Leonel Marchand, Matt McGonigal, Mike Bovia, Sean O'Halloran, Peter Craig, Ken Bird, Jamie Rogers, David Hood, Rachel Delaney, Kyle Castillo, William Edward M. Jr., and the lovely and talented Jess Vashon.
You too can become a producer on the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, and it is so easy to do. Just head on over to patreon.com/Trek Geeks today for all the details.
Next week, Dan, we're going to talk about Star Trek, of course, as we always do, but it's going to be a little different than what some people may expect. Oh, and we're going to have a pretty special guest on with us too. So, win-win.
Yeah, you can say that again. Star Trek and Haley Stoddart. How can that not be a win-win? Yes, next week, our dear friend and fellow podcaster will be joining us to discuss the impact that Star Trek has had in so many other forms of entertainment. It seems nearly impossible to flip on the TV, watch a show, and not see some kind of a Star Trek reference. So next week, we'll discuss all kinds of great Trek references. It's strange other worlds. Next week on Trek Geeks, the flagship of the podcast network for your fandom.
Plus, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but we're also going to have a special announcement next week right here on an all-new Trek Geeks. Was that you letting a cat out of the bag?
No bit.
Oh, I'd love to put you in that bag and drop it in the river.
beat me about the head with it.
Oh, that would be amazing. Of course, for more great Star Trek discussion, please check out the other member podcasts of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. You can find them all, including where to listen, by visiting trekgeeks.com/listen. And of course, for all the news on all the Star Trek CO, please visit our great friends at treknews.net. For now, this has been episode number 217 of the Trek Geeks Podcast. We do hope you all live long and prosper.
Coconut! It's still...
I think I'm deaf now.
That's good.
Music for Trek Geeks is provided by 5 Year Mission. They're writing one song for each episode of the original series. Download their music at 5yearmission.net. Trek Geeks, a Star Trek podcast, is a production of Coconut Media Works, executive producer Bill Smith. For even more Star Trek discussion, check out Discovering Trek, a Star Trek Discovery companion, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and discoveringtrek.com.
Bing bong, Dan.
Bing bong.
Whoa. Your microphone is at a different place this week.
It is. It's in a new spot now, and I like it. It's right there, so I got to be quieter. Be more quiet.
Oh, I've been dreaming of that for 5 years.
No dead air here, mister.
Well, no, we know that's not true for a fact. Chris Mumphrey's pointed it out more times than we can remember.
Yeah, right. What does he know?
Dead air Davidson.
Yes, that's right. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. Fantastic. What a great weekend. Sue and I had a day off yesterday to just hang out and do stuff, and the weather was awesome for a change, as our Trek Tuesday picture this morning showed us. Yeah, pretty awesome. Like it. No complaints here, sir.
Not that I would have cared if you had complained, Dan.
See, I would have cared because I care about you, and there you go.
Wow, what a nice guy.
No, I appreciate it.
You're far nicer than I am.
You're a nice guy. Well, you're kind of a jerk.
That's true.
That didn't last long, did it?
No. No, you really kind of hung your hat on that one pretty quickly.
Nah, I don't wear hats often. I get sunburn. If I don't wear them.
I was going to say.
It's like I might have a little bit. You might see a little right there.
I do.
Yeah. A little sun this weekend, had the sunroof open and was like, oops, had the sunroof open. Ouch. Yeah. But that's all right. I don't mind.
You didn't necessarily take appropriate precautions there?
No, I didn't. That's all right, though. It happens.
I had the weekend off because I originally was supposed to go to LA for the initial Nichols Con this past weekend.
Yep.
Which has been postponed now indefinitely, and they're talking about Vegas.
Yeah, that's kind of odd.
Which odd, awkward, all of those things.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I feel about that, but it was nice to still have the weekend off and not do a whole lot, which made me very happy.
Yeah. We always take the dogs for a ride on the weekend in the car because they love being in the car, and we take them for walks and stuff like that. And we got a bunch of stuff done around the house. I stained the concrete on the porch and mowed the lawn finally and did a whole bunch of things. So, it's always fun to get stuff done. People who aren't getting stuff done during this weird time where they're home all the time, makes you wonder what they do. Because, I'm looking for stuff to do. So, yeah.
I'm not getting stuff done during this time. So let me tell you what I do. Nothing.
I can't not do anything.
I can, and at times it's glorious.
It's very difficult for me to do that. I can't sit still. Whether I'm stitching or whether I'm, reading or something, I just can't not be doing something. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how I was going to do kind of like a limerick rhyme type thing, rhyme, but I just completely didn't. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to let you twist in the wind there.
Twist like that tree in Harry Potter.
I'll take your word for that.
Okay. I forget what his name is. Big Tree or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure the character name is Big Tree.
It's the Whomping Willow, actually, is what it is. Yeah. You can take that to the bank. Gringotts Bank. Harry Potter.
Which doesn't exist.
Oh, it does at Universal Studios Florida, though. It's very cool.
Does it?
I was in it. Yeah, they came out with a new ride, and I'll tell you what, the bank is gorgeous.
That wasn't there when I was last at Universal.
Yeah.
The only time I've been to Universal in 2014.
It was probably just Hogwarts.
Yes.
Yeah, and then they added the ride with Gringotts, and then the last year they added the motorbike ride, Hagrid's motorbike forest adventure ride thing.
The first Harry Potter ride looked like it would scare the hell out of me, so I didn't go on it.
Oh, okay. Which one was that? Is it a roller coaster?
Okay. The one at Hogwarts. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that's okay. There are two. They turned a ride that was called the Dueling Dragons, which was roller coasters that were like parallel to each other. They turned that into a Griffin something or other Harry Potter theme, but it was the same ride. But they did
it wasn't a roller coaster. You actually went through a line through the castle.
Oh yeah, the one in Hogwarts is different. Yep.
Yeah. My wife went on it, and she's like, "Yeah, you would have hated that."
It's one of those ones where you get the screens. It's like motion, and so it looks like you're falling, even though you're not.
I'm good.
Oh, I love those. My brother-in-law gets like sick to his stomach on those.
Oh. As I get older, I'm okay with not going to adventure parks I just, I'll write It's a Small World all day long.
That's more your style.
And more so than that, yeah. Although I did go on the Spider-Man 3D ride at Universal.
Yeah.
There was only one part I just couldn't look at the screen.
Was that when you're like going up all the way, like real fast?
Or hanging over the edge.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, it was really amazing.
Excellent. And that ride's held up pretty good over the years, too.
It's too bad your face hasn't held up.
Oh, no, it's fallen like a brick bleep house.
All right. Well, let's, what do you say we do this and get in, out, nobody gets hurt?
Oh, well, no, if you get hurt a little bit, I'll be all right with that.
Oh, okay.
Just a little blood.
Just a little?
Yeah.
Tiny bit? Here we go. Coconut.